downstairs.
Hey Linda, let's know. We personally do that, we audio it.
Do you have a special meeting?
I don't
You have the script
know.
right now, that you're on file.
You want me to go down there?
No, Kevin can do it.
It's just audio recording, it's not video.
It's audio.
There's no video.
There is no video.
We're working on it.
Right.
Thank you, appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
What was I gonna ask?
What?
We're able to control our own we don't have a press box. That's right, everybody, the press is back here. We moved it, that's where
I get the day old ones.
It's a little late now, but the two resolutions that are on the agenda tonight, they each require a simple majority, right? I don't know if there's any special rules because of the special meeting.
They're working.
The system.
Yeah.
I might go live stream that.
Hey, Chief. Hi.
Who are you with? Who are you with?
I'm just here.
Are you with an organization?
Yes,
Can you say which one?
if you're asking, yeah.
Yeah.
Edgar County.
Okay, good.
Did they clean out Lunch Beach yet? CB? I haven't been down. You go down there? No, Amy was gonna go down. I talked to Jim today. Tree trimmer. He's gonna call you. They what? Tomorrow. How about yourself? They got ahead of the job today, so there's a chance they might come tomorrow. They said we wanted that. Promise is cleaning up and stuff in there.
Does he normally run around after people do that? Does he normally run around after people do that?
University of Kentucky. It was a file they had with cities.
I personally want to
Questions, I feel like we should just sit down.
It's only been live since about 6:40.
Sorry to be here tonight.
Okay, but so I should always.
When you're close to the meeting time, just look at social.
Apparently, he's a special person. You could break it. If I had a deputy, I'd have him arrested. We don't have a deputy, because otherwise he'd be arrested.
We usually do.
How
you doing?
Good.
Good to see you. How you been?
Good. This is Kirk.
Yes, sir. All's well.
Howdy.
They can't.
I should sign Did you see us here?
Yeah.
You just said hi. Oh, thanks for coming. That's Bridget over there. Those are people they're trying to fire.
Richard is from
Okay. Thank you. Good to see you. Last time we saw you, we were walking.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's
That won't happen again. I mean,
That's okay. It's going to be in the core.
there won't be a meeting.
Huh? Tonight? Are they not gonna show up? Or what is it? Are they intimidated?
Oh, it is.
Somebody's screaming all around.
What?
Did they get him? Did they get the sheriff?
Am I in your way?
No.
Can I walk past? Thank you.
Go ahead.
Good evening. The hour is 7 o'clock, having arrived. This special meeting of the McHenry County Board is hereby called to order. Because the people who requested this meeting submitted two such requests, one regarding Valley High Nursing Home and the other to fire two lawfully hired employees, we put it together as one agenda with both items done simultaneously. We'll call two meetings in order to satisfy the requirement that this group probably wants. So, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Council, Kurtz, McCann, Noack, Green.
Here.
Reinhardt, Scala, Smith, Squirrel, Thorson.
Here.
Walkup.
Here.
Wheeler.
Here.
Wilbeck.
Here.
Wilcox.
Here.
Jensen. Aving. Barnes.
Here.
Bates. Christensen. Guatemala. Hammerin.
Here.
Heisler.
Here.
Young. Kearns. Chairman, we only have 9 present. We do not have a quorum.
Only 9 members having present, we don't have a quorum. It's obvious that we're below that, and as a result, under the state and local rules and our own county ordinance, there will be no meeting, so this is adjourned. But we'll move on to the second meeting then. Again, we'll call it to order, and I'll call this special meeting of the McHenry County Board to order. This is the one dealing with Valley High. The clerk will please call the roll.
Capsule. Kurtz, McCann, Noack. Green.
Here.
Reinhardt. Scala. Smith. Sparrow. Thorson.
Here.
Walkup.
Here.
Wheeler.
Here.
Wilbeck.
Here.
Wilcox.
Here.
Jensen. Aving. Barnes.
Here.
Bates. Christensen. Guatemala. Hammerin.
Here.
Heisler.
Here.
Young. Kearns. Chairman, you only have 9 present.
9 present will not be a meeting, so I ask those of you who attended to please conduct yourself in accordance with the affirmation laws that we talked about before, which forbid you from taking part in discussing the county's business. Although you don't have a quorum, the attendance here tonight does constitute the majority of a quorum, which means any discussions regarding public business will violate the Open Meetings Act. So please govern yourself accordingly. We don't need to be sued again like what happened last year. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening.
Mr. Chairman, a point of order. For those board members that are here, there's a lot of members of the public who would love to share some information with you. If you'd be willing to stay, I'd be happy to share some stuff.
You can do that.
We are adjourned.
Would you stay, Chairman? Some good information for county business that you might be aware of.
I think you're violating the Open Meetings Act. They can stay and break the law if they like. I like to follow the law.
There's no violation to listen to people.
My name is Kirk
Did you
Allen,
call everybody and tell them not to show up?
County Watchdogs.
Will you call people and tell them not to show up?
I'm not asking for interaction. I'm asking basically to hear what I have to say.
Were you calling people and asking them not to show up?
I think we're in violation of the Open Meetings Act.
No, they're not. You're thinking wrong.
Otherwise, I'd like to have a charge.
You're not. If you want to leave, you can leave. I'm going to share some.
No.
Did you call the other board members and tell them not to show up?
I'll wait outside.
No answer? Thanks.
I'll be happy to talk to everybody or anybody one-on-one.
For members of the public, I'd love to have you stay. These board members want to leave. I will give you the comments that I would have given. I'll give you the chronology of the events that got us here.
If you'd like to talk to me, I'll bring it back
Anything
in.
you'd like to talk
Sure.
about, but I will certainly.
Were you calling people, telling them not to show up? Chairman?
When enough of us leave and we don't have a quorum, then you're safe.
Actually, that's not the case, sir. But that's okay. You can leave.
I don't want to take a chance because we've been.
Trust me, any member of the public can talk to you. You don't have to answer. That
I'll
is
wait
not,
outside for everybody.
that is not a violation
I'll
of the
be
Open Meetings
outside.
Act.
Well, if everybody else is leaving, I'm staying.
Great point.
There's no violation now.
You're not a majority of a quorum. More than a majority has left. Does this microphone work? It doesn't work now?
I'm just going to list the 3 events.
No, they're not going to give you any credence.
I'm not on the committee. Are you and Craig and Yvonne on the same committee? Still good. Wait till John Hammer leaves.
It's not a majority of a quorum.
I know, but we got 4 right now.
That's not a majority of a
We still
quorum.
have committee issues.
Still stinks.
Okay.
Good to go. It's not a majority of a quorum, so it's not a problem.
We also have to worry about majority of quorum for a committee as well.
I understand.
So now we're good.
I'm not asking for any interaction. In order for it to be a violation, board members would have to discuss public business. I would like to inform the public and the members that had the courage to stay Under the 55 ILCS, which is the county code, section 2-1001, it talks about your rights and your rights to address your governing body. The Open Meetings Act says you have a right to speak, and they always say we don't have to answer. That's correct, they don't. However, under the county code, at each regular and special meeting which is open to the public, members of the public and employees of the county shall be afforded time, subject to reasonable constraints, to comment to or ask questions of the board. Now, your county chairman, as a former state representative, is well aware of what legislative intent is. The law says you have a right to ask questions. In fact, they're obligated to designate a time for you to ask questions. And the legislative intent is to get answers to those questions. Please don't be fooled by the Open Meetings Act sham that you have a right to speak, but they don't have to answer. That's not true. That's not the legislative intent. What I was going to bring up tonight was your tax dollars. As an active fire chief, I'm with the Edgar County Watchdogs. I was a township supervisor for 8 years. I'm a current fire chief. 911 has been one of my pet peeves, the Emergency Telephone System Board. And I'm finding massive illegal expenditures across the state with that agency. First one I looked at on the way up here, drove 4 hours and the chairman didn't have the courage to stay. That's disappointing. I find expenditures for an attorney for ETSB, Emergency Telephone System Board. The Emergency Telephone System Board is a county government agency required by law to be represented by the state's attorney. You should not be incurring your tax dollars going to a private attorney. That's happening here in this county. I find that the ETSB Finance Committee is approving expenditures. The law says the ETS Board is to approve expenditures, not a committee of that board. I had a question in regards to ETSB dispatching. Probably not going to get an answer to that. But on their financial reporting, I find credit card interests and fees. Dillon's rule applies in Illinois. And Dillon's rule means you only have the powers granted by law. And when it comes to credit cards, I challenge anyone in this building anywhere to show where they have been given the power to have a credit card. And there's a difference between a debit card and a credit card. The legislature, if they wanted you to have a credit card, they'd have said you could, just like they did in the Community College Act. If you read in that act, it outlines that board members can be issued a credit card. If the legislators wanted your 911 board members to have a credit card to incur fees and interest, they'd have said you have the power to do that. They didn't say that. So they shouldn't have a credit card in the first place. Next issue, legal service, I covered that. Grants. In the Illinois State Police reporting of your 911, they gave out $150,000 in grants to other agencies. There's no granting authority with the Emergency Telephone System Board. None. In less than 2 hours on a smartphone looking up reporting, those are the things I found within this county government. And we find things all over the state. You've got some real issues here. We've just hit the tip of the iceberg. It's disappointing that they wouldn't sit and listen to people talk, because there's AG opinions that said they could have all sat right here and listened to every board member say, or every person here say whatever they want, as long as they're not discussing business. And it's sad when your elected officials don't come to listen to you. Thank you.
So, John, since you didn't really want to be here in the first place, and we've already called the meetings and headed on, if you want to head out and get back to what you're doing, you're welcome to.
I was here at 7:03, my friend.
It's a little late for the 7 o'clock call that the chairman made on both meetings, but appreciate you coming. So, I'm still going to talk to you guys because I know that you came here on a couple of topics. The first thing I thought about doing was explaining how we got here in regards to the HR committee and the hiring aspect. And then I decided that, I didn't need to read off a litany. You guys probably been paying attention and seen everything that's gone on. But now that it's looking like this, I'm actually going to give you a chronology of what some of your board members have been doing since last November. November 8th, general elections. December 5th, new board is sworn in. Later that month, 2 new hires brought on in a process that was neither transparent nor open to the public. Administrator later deems it a unique situation on recording. A public relations and a communications specialist are hired to fill a temporary program manager position and a utility coordinator position. Neither do the work associated with the job descriptions of the positions therein. December 20th, 2016, first meeting. We consider restructure of the committee structure of the board. Human Resources slotted to be removed. During that meeting, amendments made by concerned board members ensured that that committee would not be eliminated. However, that doesn't mean it's going to get started right away. January 10th, 2017, at an internal support and facilities meeting, our County Administrator Peter Austin discusses the hiring. Says the chairman identified the need. Peter found a solution. He acknowledged the need to clean up those job descriptions. January 12th, 2017, Committee on Committee meets, discussing the possible membership for the HR committee. It becomes a contentious issue. January 17th, scheduled county board meeting. HR committee not put on the county board agenda to be established. We go another month without an HR committee. February 13th, process started to call a special meeting to amend the resolution that recommended appointments to standing committees. The goal is to force the establishment of the HR committee and get to work. It's being delayed by the chairman. It was not projected for the February 21st county board agenda either. When hearing about the special meeting, the chairman elected to actually add the topic to the agenda, so the special meeting was not requested. February 21st, the HR committee is finally selected and established and meets for the first time on February 28, 2017. March 15, 2017, the HR committee finally meets again, digs into the hiring aspects during that meeting. Peter states during that meeting, we have an organizational history of not bending rules, claims hiring didn't add headcount or add to the budget, admits the county board should approve items when it is unique. Now we get into the interesting part. Administration wants to clean up the two hirings. They present a reclassification resolution to change the job descriptions. March 15th, that resolution is presented to the HR committee to legitimize the personnel books. At that meeting, during extensive discussion, Peter Austin admits he did not select the candidates for the positions. His quote, didn't want to get in way of elected official, end note, to hire his own staff. That's contrary to Illinois Statute 55 ILCS 5. As an elected chairman, he does not have the authority of the other constitutional officers. He does not have the authority to hire his own staff. The resolution fails in that HR committee 4-3. More than a month later, on April 12th, that same resolution goes to internal support and facilities. It fails 6-1. We wait almost another month, and then it goes to finance, where that reclassification resolution fails to get a motion and fails to get a second. Through April and May, many letters and postcards are sent to your county board members by residents concerned about that hiring process, urging us to get involved and resolve the policies. Now we're into April 25th. HR Committee, Human Resources, discusses the need for an alternative resolution to resolve the hiring issue. Since it failed in HR and internal support, the Human Resources Committee didn't think we'd see it at the county board. Yet, we knew we needed to do something. The prevailing belief was that there was a requirement for the county board to provide, and I'll put in quote, authorization for Mr. Austin's hiring actions. Why did we feel that way? It's detailed in the county administrator ordinance, which sets the duties for the county administrator. County Administrator Ordinance, Section B10 Staff, as passed by a resolution 0-2011, meaning 2011, 07-12, 032. Attempts were made to include an alternative resolution as the future topic was not allowed. So why do we believe that? That ordinance clearly states the county administrator may employ staff to assist in the performance of these powers and duties upon authorization of the McHenry County Board. May 16, 2017, Chairman of the Board fails to include the reclassification resolution on the agenda for the board meeting, again avoiding the responsibility of the board to authorize the actions. May 23rd, 7 days later, 2017, the HR Committee Chair, Mr. John Young, fails to put the alternative resolution on the agenda. At that point, a majority of the committee members provide consensus for a special HR meeting to be called on June 13th. We did that under County Board Rules, Article 1, Section 3. We allow a majority of committee members to set the agendas, set topics, and call for new meetings. HR committee member John Young, the chair, actually agreed to press forward with the alternate resolution at 1 hour, 27 minutes, 20 seconds of the recording. And he actually offers the date of June 13th at 1 hour, 30 minutes of the recording. June 13th comes and goes. HR committee chair unilaterally, with pressure from above, fails to schedule that HR special meeting. You can listen to a future HR meeting and hear the terms willfully and knowingly breaking county board rules alleged against that committee chair. He expressed concern that even if the meeting were called, the board chairman, Chairman Franks, would not have included it on the agenda for June 20th. He totally missed the point. A majority of his committee, following board rules, asked him to take an action. He had a duty and a responsibility to do it. He didn't do it unilaterally because he didn't think the chairman would put it on the board. That's not the point. June 26th, Law and Government Committee meeting. We're actually looking back at the June 5th meetings of that, and it acknowledges that Chairman Franks is still approving committee agendas, which is contrary to our board processes. Chairman Franks actually joins the tail end of that meeting to discuss these issues and alleges that he's not required to do things or put things on agendas he considers illegal. Our first indication that he thinks the HR committee is going down an illegal road. The next day, June 27th, the HR committee chair, Mr. Young, explains or tries to explain why he didn't call the special meeting, also alluding to the illegality of the alternative resolution. At that point, a majority of the Human Resources Committee members provided consensus to seek a state's attorney opinion on the legality of that resolution. Because of what happened the previous time when our county administrator claimed the audio tape didn't say or didn't clarify for sure whether or not you had a resolution or a consensus, we went around the room. We actually asked the committee chair, do you acknowledge that there's a consensus? He said yes. We asked Mr. Austin, does he acknowledge a consensus? He would not respond. He shook his head. So I took it upon myself to acknowledge on the record to Mr. Austin that he shook his head up and down, indicating he understood a consensus this time. Later that day, on the 27th, the request for the opinion was sent to the HR committee chair and the county administrator to submit to the state's attorney. Under our board rules, I don't have the authority to ask for a state's attorney opinion. It's got to come from my committee chair or the county administrator or the chairman of the board. No actions taken. That's June 27th. July 6th, I resubmit that same email. Went to the administrator, went to the HR committee chair, went to the state's attorney. It's all FOIA-able. July 6th, asking, what's going on? Still no action. Emailed again, July 9th, still no action. July 12th, finally, the state's attorney's office is given the request after those delays by the committee chair. He actually admitted to not reading his county email for 10 days, even though June 27th, he knew a request was forthcoming. The interesting part, Chairman Franks added his own very explicit questions to that state's attorney opinion. We only asked if the resolution was legal. We now have a state's attorney opinion that is much more detailed. Unfortunately, I can't go into that with you until we discuss waiving client-attorney privilege. August 15th comes and goes. Still, nothing on the county board agenda by the chairman regarding the alternative resolution or the resolution to reclassify the positions, or mention of the state's attorney opinion. I actually attempted to initiate a discussion under new topic. We can always discuss issues. He allowed me to speak, but did not allow any discussion. It was that lack of open discussion that drove my decision to start pursuing this last recourse, which is a special meeting. It is allowed, not only by our board rules, but by Illinois statute, 55 ILCS 5, 2-1002, and our county board rules mimic that, Article 2, Section 2, Rule 2.2, and it says a special meeting can be called by 1/3 of the board, 8 members. So we started down that road. Oh, by the way, after that talk of potentially discussing the state's attorney opinion, August 22nd HR committee, yesterday, canceled. Would have been interesting to see if a majority of the committee would have waived its right to attorney-client privilege since we actually had requested that. We could have made that state's attorney opinion public for you. So it's this chronology of events and the extensive 8-month process that many county board members have undertaken on your behalf, following county board rules, to try and bring this issue to a full county board vote. The efforts of conscientious board members to bring transparency to county processes, to include the public concerns, to drive adherence to existing county board rules and policies, and ultimately to have that county board, of which you didn't get to see many of tonight, vote for or against the hiring process that was put in play. I obviously have an opinion that I don't believe it was right, but if the decision of the board is to accept that process, I've already proved being on the minority side of a vote doesn't mean you can't be a responsible board member, accept that decision of the board, and start working to make things better. I've already done that on decisions where I've been in the minority. So I was going to say, once the board votes, hopefully that action will be resolved one way or another, and we can get back to finding ways to govern in a manner that will instill trust and pride in our actions with those that matter most, the residents of McHenry County. But obviously we didn't get to that part. That's just the one topic. But
Can I still
now
go
that,
for a moment?
yeah, because we're now in this situation, I wanted to be able to provide that. I know many of you probably know the majority of that chronology. Every aspect of that I can back up with audio recordings, agenda packets, so there won't be any question about what's said in there. And I'm going to let Jeff talk. He's our vice chairman, so thank you for staying, Jeff.
Thank you very much.
And we will talk the other issue as well.
As you see, we weren't able to make a quorum tonight. The majority of our board members have decided that they are going to decide these issues that really cried for the light of day to be discussed in front of all of you who took the time out tonight, and thank you very, very much for doing so, to come and witness government in action. Now, each of these resolutions...
In action.
In action, yes, exactly. Right, I like that. Pardon the pun. We had 2 resolutions that we were going to address tonight. Now, I will tell you that we will hear in the future that those issues have now been addressed because we could not have a quorum. I would like all of you to remember the folks that did not attend here. It would be good if you found out whether or not they could or could not attend here, because we do owe them that much. But those folks that did not attend, we had 2 resolutions, and the second one I'd like to talk about too, Craig, but I'll let Craig take over on that. But we had 2 resolutions that required the light of day. We talked earlier about the Open Meetings Act, and we talked about the letter of the law, but there's also the spirit of the law, and in this case, the spirit of the Open Meetings Act has been ignored. And I don't, to me, on a gut level, it just seems so simple to look at reality and realize that that is exactly what had happened. When we talk about Valley High, I think there's even bigger reasons why we have to discuss that with regard to, number one, 15 years ago, voters came out and voted to support Valley High. The voters took a specific interest, they acted, and they voted to support Valley High in the terms of hard-earned tax dollars. Last Friday, we were informed by staff of a situation where the rights to lease the operation of Valley High was going to go out for a request for qualification to find a broker to do that. Now, I will tell you, I have a friend, his name is Chris. I'm not going to mention any last names or anything like that, but I got a phone call from him, and he said, well, Jeff, what's your problem? I mean, if I was selling my house, and I called a broker to find out how much it was worth, what's wrong with that? I mean, that's what people would do. That's rational. And Chris, you're a married man. Would you have done that without asking your spouse? Well, no, I would have gotten divorced. I said, exactly. You were not part of the discussion with regard to Valley High. Remember, you came out to vote. And when I say you, I'm talking body public. You came out to vote and you supported Valley High. Now, basically under a very, very cloaked scenario, we're going to go out and we're going to request qualifications of a broker. Now, you might say, well, that doesn't mean anything. Well, what about if you were working for Valley High? If I was an employee at Valley High and I know that all of a sudden my county board is going out and looking for somebody to take it over, to take over operations, Now, they can tell you till the sun goes down that that's not what we're doing, but what message does it send to those employees?
What if you were a resident? What
Exactly.
if you were an 85-year-old woman who was
Thank
wondering
you.
if she was going to be bounced out on the street?
Thank you. Now, remember what I said before about, thank you. Remember what I said before about the people who weren't here and why it's so important to find out whether or not they could have made it. Because the ones that could have made it, that did not show up, denied you, the public, the opportunity to hear that discussion. And there's nothing more wrong than that. And we talked earlier about the Open Meetings Act. We talked about the spirit versus the letter of that law. I will lose every day on the letter of that law. But by golly, we've got to win on the spirit of that law. And we've got to open up and put sunshine on what's going on. And that's why we're here tonight. That's why at least 8 of us, or 10 of us, showed up or signed to have this event occur. We run into people every day. And they ask us, what's with this hiring? Why, I mean, it doesn't make sense. We know that all of a sudden, you know, the county board chairman for a century never needed any help, and all of a sudden we need 2. What happened? Well, seriously. And then we have other folks that say, hey, is my job at stake? Is my home at stake? Is the roof over my head and the people that take care of me, are they going to be here in a little while? They don't know. And that kind of event can't occur. It shouldn't occur. Not in this environment. Not in this forum. So thank you for letting me spout off and blow some steam. And again, as I say, I will stay around long enough to talk to anybody and everybody.
So there were some questions on the HR stuff.
I heard you mention that you have a county board policy in regards to getting an opinion from the state's attorney.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean that it has to come from the board? Is that or the chairman? Is that the policy?
I'll just read it to you. It's a little easier sometimes.
And I think I'm going to give you a golden goose here in a minute.
All right. So, request for state's attorney opinion. When it is necessary to request the state's attorney opinion, the following guidelines will be followed whenever practicable. The request should be in writing, set forth all background information necessary to provide a written opinion, include any deadlines the civil division should meet, any attachments and exhibits should be included. If the request is regarding a contract, said request should state whether the contract is renewal. The request should come from one of the following: the county administrator, county board chair, or committee chair.
All right. When I mentioned Dillon's rule, you mentioned rule of law. You cannot create a policy that is more restrictive than state law. Powers and duties of your state's attorney, right out of the statute. Number 7, to give his opinion without fee or reward to any county officer in his county. How much clearer can that be?
Is there going to be a debate over whether a county board member is an officer? Because we have the statute of constitutional officer.
It doesn't say constitutional officer.
Yep, it says
Your
officer.
highway engineer is a county officer. There's tons of AG opinions on what constitutes a county officer. You are a county officer. Board members are county officers. You have a right to an opinion, and he is obligated by law to give you that opinion on all matters, whether criminal or business of the county. That policy is not in concurrence with state law.
And all of those, it should come from, it never says shall come from. So should is an option.
The state law is in your corner. It's clear as a bell. He has to give you an opinion if you ask for it as a county board member. We've been down this road with multiple counties.
And I would encourage you to keep calling more special meetings every stinking 72 hours. The public will take notice and the press will take notice. They might start off not on your side, but by the time we get done with what we're going to do, they'll be on your side.
So you heard the chairman claim that the resolution was to fire 2 legally hired people. So let me address a couple of the statements or the words that he used. The resolution does not fire anyone. The resolution was about adhering to the county board responsibility for budgetary and personnel department structure. So there was no ask of firing anyone. It was discussing whether those positions, which had been vacant for more than 90 days, so under our policies, should have been eliminated even before the 2017 budget year started, much less whether or not those bodies should still be in positions that the job description had been. So it's about the policy. So don't let that, we're looking to fire anyone, be a part of that discussion. The second part, he used the term legal hires. He probably should be careful because he's referring to a state's attorney opinion and the wording in there. Because they were legal doesn't mean they followed county board processes, were ethical, were transparent, were open, or were the right way to go. So those are a couple of clarifications with the comments you heard and how he related to the resolution as it was. And you can see the resolution, it's on the county website under the agenda packet. Any other questions on HR?
The board members that failed to physically be here, is there any way to know if they put in a request for being absent to be on a phone?
There was one, Donna Kurtz had
Okay.
worked to be called, but she's the only one that I know of. Were there any others that had, Chuck Wheeler was here.
Oh,
Yep. So, yeah, I mean.
You gotta be present.
So that,
Yeah, John had said earlier he wasn't sure if he was gonna make it, so he prepared us for that potential.
Okay. You would not have made the quorum, otherwise I'd be talking to Peter saying, why didn't you ask for a few more minutes to allow folks that had said they might be late to show up, but that's okay. Any other questions on that one? Okay. That special meeting was already in the works. As I mentioned, when we didn't get a chance to talk about the state's attorney opinion at the last county board meeting on the 15th, we had started the process of collecting the required signatures for that. With Valley High, we'd had the committee of the whole on the 12th of August. We'd had the county board where Peter gives an administrator's report. We had had a Valley High operating board that Wednesday. And if I recall, during the administrator's report, not really any discussion about anything regarding Valley High at the county board. We talked about the strategic plan, and yes, in there is something about dealing with private partner or public-private partnerships with Valley High. At the operating board, which I sit on, no mention about an RFQ going out, no mention explicitly of those words of the strategic plan. We talked a little bit about the county strategic plan, and members of that operating board have told me they were under the impression that that discussion talked about things like leasing laundry services or things like that. So on Thursday, a county board member who's not here was notified by a resident of her district who watches the county RFP and bid site. And there was posted a request for qualifications in regards to Valley High. It talked about, and I don't want to talk without explicits.
Notes.
Yep. So, the RFQs number 17-37. The County of McHenry hereby solicits for qualified and interested brokers to submit statements of qualifications to provide brokerage services for the purpose of leasing McHenry County's Valley High Nursing Home. Probably could have been discussed a little more in depth during the Valley High Operating Board, but that's okay. The big issue, all of a sudden, is twofold for me and for a number of others. Why are we so concerned about a little RFQ when we've been told hundreds of them go out every year and the county board never worries about them? You guys remember us hiring a federal lobbyist? If you don't know, the county now has a federal lobbyist in D.C. with our taxpayer monies lobbying the federal government to spend more taxpayer monies back here. That's not the issue. The issue is how we got there. An RFQ went out. Board didn't know about it. 7 respondents came in. 2 people culled that down to 3. At that point, one of those 3 was brought in front of a law and government committee. Not to talk about their qualifications per se, to explain why we might want to consider a lobbyist. Small discussion, not a whole lot at the county board level. Next thing we know, we get an update that 3's been culled to 1. And now we get a resolution to approve the lobbyist, and it passed the board. So the concern with this is not so much that the RFQ was put out, What we wanted was an open, transparent discussion of what happens after this point. Why? One, the topic, for sure. Valley High has been a big concern of the residents for the past couple of years. The levy, the reserve fund, taking care of our elderly. But the RFQ talks about your qualifications to anyone that submits shall be opened in private by the evaluation committee to avoid disclosure of contents to competing professionals.
That violates FOIA.
Well, but I'm concerned that we just went through an RFQ process and ended up with a resolution, and the evaluation committee was 2 people. Was it any more? Yourself and the chairman?
Well, that was a committee.
From 7 to 3. It might have included Michelle Avang when it went from 3 to 1, the chairman of law and government.
That was a committee?
That was the committee. So we wanted to ask, hey, let's have a discussion. Who's on that evaluation committee? Let's let the public know who's going to be looking at this. We didn't get to have that discussion. The evaluation of qualifications will be done by the county staff, evaluated on experience in doing projects of similar nature and adherence to specs. Criteria will be utilized in the evaluation of qualifications for development of the short list of professionals to be considered for interviews or potential negotiations. Criteria may in all probability be assigned varying weights at the county's discretion to reflect relative importance. As a county board member, I'd really like to know ahead of time what the qualifying criteria are going to be for evaluation and maybe their general weighting. But I get it. That's probably an executive session issue. You guys won't get to hear that because now we're basically telling the people that are going to submit exactly what we want to see from them. So I could see where that one might not be as public as required or as maybe desired. It was an interesting part, and maybe I won't find it in here. It talked about the fact that having well, maybe I'll find it. Unless, Peter, you want to offer, talked about having a good relationship with the vendor to begin with.
Can I just comment on something that you said?
Sure.
Thank you. Craig just mentioned another process, and he mentioned pretty accurately the steps that occurred and how they occurred and how we ended up with a lobbyist for McHenry County in Washington, D.C., and how many of us, those of us that are on law and justice, had absolutely no clue that it was going to happen. It happened and started out the same way with an RFQ, and then with that weeding process that Mr. Wilcox, Colonel Wilcox has outlined. Imagine my interpretation now of an RFQ that is looking for a broker for the purposes of leasing out Valley High. Pretty much, you think it's kind of a fait accompli in a way because I've seen it before. It happened. It happens very recently in my memory, and you know, that's a pattern. It's a pattern that's established of how some people can get business done here in McHenry County, and personally, I have a problem with that. Now, I want to point something else out to everybody, and that is that we discussed Valley High. It certainly was a political issue because a lot of us just got elected, and we discussed Valley High for the purposes of the papers, for the Daily Herald, for the Northwest Herald, our positions on Valley High and what have you. It was certainly an issue then. I happen to be one of the people that think we should explore all options. So, shouldn't I be on the side of, oh yeah, let's go ahead and continue on here? Guys, it's not the way we should be doing things. Again, you folks are invested in Valley High. Now, whether or not you voted for that tax increase, the Valley High tax to save Valley High 15 years ago or not, the public is invested in Valley High. You, by virtue of and you're always invested in everything, every dollar we spend, but a lot of times and the argument's going to be, hey, we do these RFQs every time we want to buy, you know, we want to do something that's mundane, that we do year in and year out, and if we asked you to deal with these RFQs, it would just overload you and it would be too much, and that's why county boards in the past have kind of pushed that off onto staff. Well, how often do you lease out or get rid of or privatize, which is exactly what we're doing, how often does a county board actually privatize a politically charged issue, privatize a nursing home? It just doesn't happen every day. It certainly is one of the most extraordinary things that this county board could ever endeavor.
I would encourage some real quick, deep research, and I'll be happy to forward you what we just went through with Effingham County. There is, under Article 8, Section 1 of the Constitution regarding public property, credit, how you can use it. Leasing of public property, there's numerous AG opinions on what can and cannot be done legally. And I would get an opinion of whether this can even be done to privatize before you go through spending money on this, finding someone to broker this thing, because it may be that you're going to find you can't legally do it.
I love that, and you know what I love about that is that's discussion. That's what we're talking about. These people need to have that discussion. That's exactly what I'm talking about. And you need to hear it, and you need to hear where every single one of those individuals is on that issue. Now they're all going to not be able to have, they're going to say, we don't have to say anything now. We basically approved it without being here. In the dark. That's my problem.
You've been denied representation.
Exactly.
By everyone who's not here tonight.
By the people who chose not to show up. Not the ones that couldn't, but the ones that didn't and could have. Please keep that in mind.
So here were the words that kind of stood out to me. The evaluation committee may conduct discussions with one or more professionals with whom the county has a previous satisfactory relationship, or those professionals who submit acceptable or potentially acceptable qualifications. As a former contracting member in the military, that tells me I'm not quite comfortable how open and transparent that process is going to be. Now, I'm sorry Peter left, because I was going to offer a little bit back to them. He had sent an email to all county board members, so I do want you guys to hear this on his behalf. If he comes back in, I'll read it again. But he was disappointed that we felt the Valley High Operating Board had gone the way it did, because he thought there was significant discussion on alternative service delivery, and he did not definitively say an RFQ to explore brokers to facilitate leasing Valley High is coming out soon. He intended to, but after a long, somewhat disjointed meeting, he simply forgot. He forgot and he apologizes, and he thinks he forgot because he was so pleased with how the meeting went. And I was there. It was a good meeting. We're talking about a new strategic plan for that, and that was great. Okay. So I was actually giving the benefit of your email to the county about how you intended to bring it up at Valley High Operating Board and forgot, so I wanted to be fair on that part. So I'm also going to be fair to the chairman. Since we didn't have the public discussion, some board members got this email, and I want to express to you his views, even though they won't be officially on the record at this point, but they are in an email from him. He's writing in regards to the future of Valley High, claims that due to inaccurate blogging come to his attention that misconceptions and misinformation have arisen among some members of the county board related to Valley High. He said discussion of Valley's High future began on the board long before he was elected. Absolutely true, long before many of the board members were elected, and will be going forward. He says, as you recall, the board approved the plan, McHenry County Strategic Plan, at last week's meeting. And he does go on to quote, and this is in the strategic plan, examine future models for operations at Valley High, evaluate the core services, and explore alternative profiles or viability, desirability of various options. Those words are in the strategic plan, not in the RFQ. So he talks about staff had submitted the qualifications to firms.
I have to point something out right now.
Okay.
Correct, that was in the strategic plan. And you folks knew that we were having a discussion regarding the strategic plan. But you didn't know we were having a discussion about the existential discussion about Valley High. You did not know that. Because normally what would happen is we would post that as an agenda item, and we would post it in the light of day so you all have an opportunity to see it, and you all would have had an opportunity to attend that meeting and have an opportunity to have public comment before that meeting to discuss your opinion and your values with regard to Valley High. The strategic plan doesn't cut it. It doesn't cut it. We can't be relying on something that is not posted specifically, especially this week. That's all.
So he did kind of make some statements, and these are the important ones. Nothing will happen to Valley High without an extensive and public county board debate. I appreciate that from him. I just thought we might have a little start on that tonight. The next step will be submit the results of the RFQ, which was submitted based on our strategic plan, to committee for discussion. Notice those are results. meaning an evaluation committee already took a number of qualified submissions and culled it down. Not what we're looking for. We want to know exactly how that's going to get done. Paramount in any such discussion would be putting measures in place ensuring that Valley High's mission to care for indigent seniors would not only be maintained, but improved should private control be seriously considered. I'm sure most folks are going to appreciate those words. How are we going to put those into action? That was going to be a question tonight. And here's the best one, and you guys need to remember this as we go forward. If the county board decides that ceding control of Valley High to a private entity is the best course of action, I, meaning the chairman, will request that the final decision be put to the voters via binding referendum. Voters created Valley High, so it's only fair that they decide its future management, if the conversation even gets that far. So I do feel it's important that you get both sides and know that that has been put in writing by the county board chairman. And as long as I'm on this board, I will be working to make sure that happens, that we have that discussion, that we don't end up with an evaluation committee of two that culls a number of submissions down to a number more, and then goes into negotiations and ends up not providing anything to the board till we have a single vendor with a negotiated contract to vote yes or no on.
That's putting the cart before the horse.
Oh.
You need to have that discussion before any of this crap happens.
Well, and so you know the resolution was to rescind this RFQ in the hopes that it would go to committee and back to the Valley High Operating Board for discussion before we even got this far.
I chaired the committee that oversaw the evaluation of Valley High prior to the referendum. And we put out a document identifying the areas where we thought, and we gave the information on the direction that the board needed to take. We gave them 3 options, and that was the proper way to do it. So this is absolutely disgusting. As a taxpayer, I can't even begin to tell you how frustrated I am. But I want to say thank you, Craig. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Jim. I don't know this gentleman, but thank you very much. Just please keep going. It hurts. I've been there, and please keep going.
This is John Reiner. He's one of our new county board members elected with me in November, sworn in December. Yes.
Craig, if I could ask the 3 of you a favor.
You can always ask.
And I don't even know if it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
But I totally agree that this needs to be an open public discussion. As a lifelong member of McHenry County, or resident of McHenry County and a taxpayer, and it needs to be openly discussed in the public, honestly, truthfully, without political bias, and that's the part I don't know if it's even possible, before any referendum or anything put to the voters of this county. And all options should be on the table. All impacts on the residents of McHenry County should be on the table, both physical and financial. And I would ask that that happen.
I appreciate that. And I think this was the desire of this special meeting, to start that discussion. But, you know, we'll keep trying.
Yep, we'll keep trying.
Call some more meetings.
Could I have one question on RFQs? I'm a teacher and I've been working with the union and school districts and we put out an RFQ for insurance. It wasn't happening for many years, but is there a monetary minimum on what the board is notified? I mean, it's all taxpayer money, and this is probably a big cost for taxpayers. If this wasn't brought to your attention and kept going, is there some kind of minimum where it's like a $4 million account, it should be in front of the board?
Right. So the challenge for an RFQ, there's no expenditure of county money. The RFQ is a request. Companies are going to expend some money to provide a proposal showing their qualifications.
I get that.
Even in the evaluation of those, there's not an expenditure other than staff time or the evaluation committee time. So that's why you hear that RFQs and some RFPs go out all the time. Now, we get resolutions on the county board to the purchasing ordinance for anything that exceeds $20,000. So that's the answer to the number you're looking for. But for the RFQ, there won't be an expenditure of dollars other than staff time once the proposals come in. Is that accurate, Peter?
Yeah, in this instance, there probably wouldn't be any expenditure ever because it's a broker who's probably, if it ever came to be, would be compensated, through the lease.
Okay.
which when you're not really seriously considering getting to that stage where you actually have a transaction, you're really putting that poor broker out to come out and do some work, set up, you know, do an RFQ, spend some time that they could be doing something to put some food on their table. I'm sorry.
In regards to your RFQ and this whole process, if it comes to the board for a resolution to vote on, you've got one person to select from. How are you getting around the requirement when you're expending more than 20,000 or 30 by statute of not having it bid out?
Peter?
You're making an expenditure.
First of all, that would be legal qualifications for professional service. We'd be fine there.
Shouldn't the board be
Professional service
discussing
of what?
all of the brokers and all the proposals?
So, the evaluation committee.
There's a Professional Services Selection Act, and that's not listed under that.
Sir, we would be following a very legal purchasing process if we continued down this path.
That's not what I said. You said it was under the professional services. There's a Professional Services Selection Act, and it lists three criteria, three occupations that fit into that.
Architects.
And engineers. A broker is not one of those three.
Fair. And that's why we're not using that professional services angle where you don't even need to go out to bid. This is out to bid. This is a public, request.
Oh, you're not going out for bid. You're going out.
It's a request for qualifications, sir.
There's a big difference between request for proposals versus.
This is not a request for proposal.
And then,
So it's a request for RFQ request for questions, qualifications. When it comes, and my question is, when it comes to the board as a resolution to hire that contractor, what was the bidding process? It wasn't followed.
and you said there was a committee to select, a committee of two. Where were their
We don't know what that evaluation
where were
committee
their
is going to be.
agendas and their meeting minutes, and all that stuff has to be open in public, not in private individually, somebody's back office sweatshop. It doesn't happen that way.
That's the concern.
What's that?
So, Peter, would you like to close down?
No, there's a gentleman.
No, but Greg, the staff has a very prominent role in all sorts of professional service or other bid. We have a process here in place. It's quite legal, quite professional, and I'd love for you to take a look at our purchasing ordinance. And we have, excuse me, sir, we have the ability as staff to make recommendations to committee for a dump truck, professional services, or a broker, or whatever it is. Now, in many instances, the committee wants to be more involved. In this instance, I think the current committee certainly would be more involved. But there's different. It's not one size fits all.
Oh, I understand that totally. What's your position here? Are you a board member or?
No, I'm the county administrator.
County administrator. Well, in regards to a professional process and everything, I just pointed out numerous illegal actions going on with your ETSB. So I appreciate your pointing out that, hey, it's all been legal, but there's some things that are not legal.
I'm not familiar with what you're referring to the ETSB. You know that they're on their own local government, and they report to.
Actually, they report to the county board.
Correct.
They're under the county board. They answer to the state's attorney for legal counsel, and they're spending money outside legal authority.
They report to their own board. Their board.
Right, and there's numerous AG opinions. I'll be happy to forward them to you.
You don't need to.
They answer to the county board. They can't be sued or sue, and that's the key criteria as far as are they an agency. They can't sue or be sued. If I want to sue your ETSB, I sue the county because they are county government. They are not their own independent government.
The ETSB consists of a mixture of county board appointees and village appointees.
You betcha. I understand ETSB inside and out. And they are not a separate local government. That is not true. They cannot sue or be sued. Ask your state's attorney. This agency would be the ones that get sued. So when you tell me...
I'm not telling you anything, sir.
When you did. You told me that this was a legal process. You have all these professionals. In essence, you're telling me you know what you're doing. I just gave you examples that somebody doesn't know what they're doing.
Okay. Somebody else? I'm sorry, but somebody else.
I was just curious, do you think the results of this special meeting will be reported in the Northwest Herald?
No.
Hey, Jordan, isn't it
Speculation, I won't comment on that.
Oh, I'll comment on it. I spent 20 minutes on a recorded interview yesterday for a story that was supposed to apparently show today. This part is rumor and speculation. There was an employees meeting where there was rumor that someone was going to make a comment to the Northwest Herald for the article, and we're told, don't bother, there won't be a Northwest Herald article. So that's all rumor and speculation. I'm not sure what to make of it, but all I know is I was led to believe an article would have been in today's paper by the members of the Northwest Herald.
I can back that up, as I'm the one that had the conversation with them.
Oh, is that Jordan?
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks for the phone call.
Thank you, Jordan.
Yes, we were planning to write a preview article and attend this meeting to discuss the issue. However, because of some breaking news, we decided not to go with the preview and still stuck to coming to this meeting and covering it. So
Appreciate
I apologize for, didn't mean to mislead you, it changed late in the day, and we decided to just skip the preview and go right to the heart of it tonight. That's why I'm here.
Fabulous.
So we'll go to print, is that what
Yeah,
you're
it'll be all right.
What was that breaking news?
Anything out
Yeah.
I'm curious, I read the newspaper. What was the breaking news that superseded
That
this
is a
very
good
important
question.
meeting?
I do not remember exactly. I was in the office about 5
Thank you, Jordan. Thank you very much for being candid and forthright with us. I really do appreciate that. I think you should be.
All right, so thank you for allowing us to say. I know it's
Not my decision.
lights on and things.
I didn't want to leave everything unattended. So.
Yep, appreciate it. Thank you guys very much for coming tonight.
I have a question. Seeing we don't know if the Northwest Herald will cover it or not. But there might be some breaking news. There might be a raccoon on the side of the street that died. So will McHenry County Blog cover it?
Yeah.
I'm the only one that covers this.
That's right. You're the only news in the county.
Both stories.
Pardon me, everybody. Thank you, Cal.
Please, one more moment.
Pardon me. I want very much to thank all of you that were here tonight. And I will be sure and contact everyone that had to leave early and thank them for being here, and please beg you to keep up the effort. We need it.